Okay. Who else
Okay.
wants to tell us what you came up with?
I kind of build on what Catherine said, at least as she was speaking. An idea came to mind that maybe expands the and takes the field a little bit. Being from history, one of the things, especially like the agent problem and such, I think if we look at AI is, the next iteration of challenges that I think we've dealt with as society, you know, time and time again, every time there's been a new innovation. So like, one possible angle that, you know, might be something worth looking at from a historical perspective is like, how does AI like and different from, when the Industrial Revolution, when there were very similar fears of, all the jobs are going to go away because, machines or robots or computers a little bit later. Uh, so how, so looking at like, AI as the next iteration of this, how's it like, how's it different? And, and that history might be an angle to uh, view this from. It would, I think, would be a very interesting pathway class.
Wendy, thank you for being here. I teach social media, so story three relates to this and how much more media literate to know when you're consuming AI or human content going to be very important. Who else? At least one other people, one other person? Yes, Nora.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just read these three different stories. As we are guiding our students, are becoming, are uh, preparing them for the real world scenario from the classes to the real world. So few things like the companion, you mentioned that particular story that nowadays students are more kind of using the technology than us. They are constantly on the screen, either gaming or some videos, YouTubes and all. And there are the highly likely chances that they might fall into that false or deep fake praise. If we can miseducate them or include something in our curriculum so that they should judge means like based on their means ethical way, or they should try to means differentiate between what is actual and then what is a fake, because most of the suicides sometimes based on the game, sometimes they are blindly following the things. So if we include something like that in this AI world, because it is very hard for us to say that this is original video or fake video, because they are going all the way from creating the content or creating the same voice you mentioned, like this is the companion problem that is more applicable for our means kind of category for the students. Definitely the agent problem will be when they are entering into the real world scenario, they should be well prepared to use the technology wisely. So the word using technology is not harm, but how they are using AI for the good. So in the your previous talk also you mentioned about using AI is for the good, is will be good. So otherwise, so if we include something like that, some scenario, so that student use the information for making the right decision. So whatever the information is available, if they are able to make the right or informed decision based on that, and they should check that how these particular decision tree on what basis they are making. If you ask the question and if they are putting that question again into the chat gpt and they are getting the data, and then they are just representing that thing, then again, so we come back to the circle, zero position again. So I thought that if we include something similar into that zone, if students needs to ethically, they should understand what is right and what is wrong, how much extent we can use the AI, and they should, based on the information, they should make the right decision. So that's what I thought that to be included in the pathways, or we need to consider.
That's great. Absolutely. One more, and then we got to move on. But anybody else? Yeah, one more who want to tell us about your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at introducing a course within our exercise science curriculum. And I think it speaks to the agent problem because a lot of the health data, information that their individuals are able to get, whether it's health, wellness, or fitness, is being generated by algorithms. And that can be in your smartwatch, it could be in all kinds of biometric trackers. I can go in and I can ask for a fitness program. So I think that emphasizing the value of the human involvement in the creation of that programming is going to be important. And I think what it allows the students to do is really to some degree address the liar's dividend as well in understanding how to utilize the data, how to make sure that the data isn't just driving the decisions and it's not just being generated, but that it's being evaluated correctly, and that it's being utilized to fit the client because everybody's got that individuality. And so I think that's where I would kind of speak to the problems.
Sounds really valuable, essential, really. I mean, it's a critical problem. Um, well, I want to move on. We've got a bunch of other stuff that we want to get to. Thank you for spending some time thinking about that stuff. And just to transition into our next section, I'm just going to ask you, if you taught a pathway course and you wanted to accomplish some of the things you're talking about, you wanted to help your students understand AI in those ways, what would be helpful to you? Would it be helpful if students had certain competencies? Would it be helpful if students had certain skills in your class? If that's true, then we've got good news for you because that is part of what a pathway course is about. Because, as we say, every pathway course is an essential education course as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to JP to take us through the next phase. JP, you're muted still.
So I'll probably just have to ask you to move the slides as I go through. But first, as Matt said, every pathway course is a essential education, general education course. So, and those of you that already teach in gen ed, some of this may be, stuff you already know, but didn't want to make that assumption. So, as we jump into this, my part is to kind of talk about the structures of what it means to be in the general education program, essential education program here at EKU. So as we think about if you're in the general education program, courses are expected to, well, meet or support the goals of the general education. And those were recently streamlined to four. I'll just read them off here. I didn't add them to the slides, but they're pretty straightforward. Using critical thinking and disciplinary knowledge to examine issues and to identify solutions, distinguish the methods that underlie the search for knowledge, integrate knowledge methods that will deepen their understanding of and will inform students' own choices about issues of personal and public importance, and then apply essential transferable skills to academic, professional, or civic experiences, enabling students to adapt, contribute, and thrive in a rapidly changing world. So what that points towards is that, again, this is general education is built around these kind of universal, broad multidisciplinary knowledges and methods that provide that foundation that they're going to build their professional lives on. So, while those goals are not formally assessed, that if it's a new course being added to the general education program, that would be part of the consideration when it joins. Now, kind of building from those goals, every element in the general education program has two competencies that it will be assessed on. Kind of tying to the goals, one competency focuses on element area knowledge, like comprehension, interpretation, and one competency tends to focus on element area methods, kind of analysis, nonverbal delivery being examples of those. And so within our beloved, well-oiled STAR reporting system, as part of being in the general education, you will be assessing that on the 2-year cycle that works on. So each course will have to have an instrument that one each for each of those competencies, and that is assessing that competency. Additionally, the general education program is integrating the Kentucky Graduate Profile Essential Skills. Now, so every element has 2 skills that it'll be assessing. Now, skill 10, use information for decision making, is universal across all elements in the general education program. And then each element has one other element specific skill that it'll be expected to assess. So we can go on here. If you are not yet familiar with it, just I guess a few weeks ago, the Board of Regents approved the Central Education Transformation that reorganized our element structure for general education. Mostly moving things around, changed the credit hours a little bit, but we now have a 30 credit hour general education that is comprised of 4 elements, totaling 9 sub-elements. Element 1 is communications, so writing and oral communications, pretty much the same. And element 2 is kind of quantitative analytics focused, with quantitative reasoning being 2A, the natural sciences now being a sub-element of element 2. Arts and humanities comprise element 3, and then element 4 is social and behavioral sciences with historical and global perspectives, and social and behavioral sciences being 4B. Now, part of the deliberations of a new course coming into general education would be finding which of those elements is the best fit for that course. Where does it support coherently the theme of that element? Now, I will say, you might be wondering what the flex is at the bottom there. So 27 of the 30 hours of a student's general education fall into clearly one of those other 9 elements. The flex is a block of classes that, practically speaking, most every class that is not that is in general education can be in flex, although that is a little bit qualified, and there's no really clear way to say this. So a general education class can be in up to 2 elements. That can be either one of the 9 sub-elements, or 2 of them can be any 2 blocks. So that could be, for example, several of the language classes are both in element 1C, and I think 3B is the other one they're in. Now, those classes would not be able to be in the flex element, but a class that was in, say, just 4B, social and behavioral sciences, could be in 4B and flex. So you can be either in one of the elements in the flex element or in 2 elements. And that is an important consideration for what we were just talking about with assessment. Because if you are like those language classes, then in two distinct sub-element blocks, then your assessment load is nearly doubled. You have to, if you're going to be in 2 blocks, you have to be assess both the competencies for both those elements and all the essential skills tied to those sub-elements. I think as a team, we would encourage new classes coming in to, unless there was a really, really compelling, intense reason to be in 2 distinct sub-elements, we would encourage you generally to pick a primary element and be in the flex as opposed to 2 elements. All right, next slide, please. So just a brief summary of the competencies for each element to give you a feel for it. And again, if you want as much information as I can provide about those, feel free to email me to get what I can pull together about these. But each element, so element 1A, competency 1, information literacy analysis. Competency 2, rhetorical awareness and style. So again, very natural, communications oriented, and several of them talking about discipline comprehension, showing that they can have mastered the knowledge, and then some analytical methods around that element. Probably next slide is well. And then the essential graduate profile essential skills. So this is probably the biggest, well, there's been a lot of new things transforming general education in the last year here, but making some of the largest waves is this Kentucky graduate profile essential skills. So imagining most of us are at least somewhat aware that this has been Kentucky's iteration of really a national push to strengthen especially soft skills, but these kind of core employable skills that employers are looking for, critical thinking, communications, if interacting effectively with others. And CPE is compelling us to integrate this, and it's a good movement to make sure that we're sending our graduates out into the world with these skills. So our part in the general education program is to identify focal skills for each element. As I said before, all general education elements will have skill 10, using information for decision making, so an information literacy skill that they will be a part of. And then as you can see, every other element has a different element specific skill that it's focusing on. A couple of them are in multiple elements, but this distribution, including the GSD specific skills, covers all 10 skills are emphasized at least once somewhere in the general education program. And assessments will be a part of that. So if you're going to be in the general education program, assessing those skills for that element will be specific. All right, next slide, please. So now, hopefully make this a little bit easier or more palatable, is that you can double dip a little bit on the assessment instruments. So the instrument has to be unique for an individual competency and for the individual skills, but you can use the same instrument for one of the competencies and one of the skills. So, um, so you will need to have at least two instruments, but the competencies have to be different, the skills have to be different, but a competency and a skill can be one instrument, and the other competency and the other skill could be assessed on the same instrument. Now, what came up in conversation as we were preparing for this a little bit is noting that while they have to be separate, they can be separate parts of the same assignment. So one assignment, larger assignment, can be broken into two distinct components that would be assessed separately. And I did want to mention for the essential skills, thinking through what level of assessment, and I would refer you to CPE's graduate profile website for more information on their thinking on this. But for our purposes in general education, we're looking at that middle level of mastery, miles. So their expectations are what they call benchmark, coming out of high school, entering college, and then a milestone would be approximately finishing up the general, as they get through the general education program, that level, and then by the end of their program, showing some level of true mastery, what they call a capstone. Now, if you're proposing a new course for the general education program here, the assessment instruments will need to be a part of that application. Okay, and next slide, please. All right, so how do we get a new class into the general education program? First order business would be contacting myself or Aaron, and with to let us know that you're interested in that, and we would be happy to brainstorm if you have a class that you think might be part of the general education program or good fit. We can talk about that and what element it might fit in, and try to walk you through what you'll need to prepare. Then prepare a curriculum proposal form. It's not terribly onerous, but that would be where you talk about the course, where it fits. Part of that would be having a syllabus and the assessment instruments ready. And then would go through the typical curriculum process, departmental and college approvals, coming to the general education committee, and ultimately to CAA. Now, to get it in the catalog for the coming academic year, that is a bit of an expedited process, as our UGEC meeting is April 2nd. And so to make sure we would be able to get that on the agenda, we would ask that application to be approved, be to us by March 27th. There may be some flexibility if need be to call a special UGEC meeting. I would need to run that by the committee, but my other coach Aaron, Jennifer Weiss, but in a pinch that might be possible. But the Council for Academic Affairs meeting is April 23rd. So to get things into the catalog, because we don't have we set up, as I understand from the registrar, we set up the catalog for the academic year. So once it's set, we're not really going to add to that. we would need to get those approvals through those committees by the end of spring term here. And so now there's a little more flexibility for proposing a pathway section of an existing general education class. So again, contact us. We can kind of talk you through that. Similar process, but we don't have to go. We would still go in front of UGEC, but adding an existing general education class to the pathway does not need quite the formality of adding a full class, brand new class to the general education program. I think wouldn't necessarily need to. We did have this discussion coming up in preparation. We would want at least kind of the chair's sign off for the content being added to the general education class. It might not need the formal departmental and college review, but we don't want to be. We want to make sure that the class fits what the program is expecting of that class. But then that could actually happen in the fall. I did confirm with Jennifer that Weiss that we could add an existing class to the pathway, and we should be able to get that done in the fall if it's already part of the general education program. So with that, I think that is the extent of my prepared remarks, such as they were prepared. I'm happy to. I think we've got maybe a minute or two for questions as best I can answer them. You guys make me feel like I'm in front of my undergraduate class again. Questions? Or I could do Bueller. But if there aren't any, I can hand them. Okay, Catherine?
Just a quick one. I can't imagine having anything ready for the spring, but what about next year? Are we always looking at kind of an end of March date?
Yeah, I think so. And that's more of a registrar issue that, as I understand it, like once they lock the catalog for the academic year, that we don't change it. Again, certainly we could, we can approve things earlier than that, but that becomes kind of into March for the April meeting, becomes kind of to get something in for the next academic year.
Thank you.
I would also add that it's really, we're working sort of a year out from when the semester when it's going to be taught. So
yeah,
these deadlines are really for spring 27 teaching of the course. So if you want to teach a class in fall 27, so the next semester, that deadline, especially for a new course, is going to be during the fall, this coming fall, right? So a year out is when we're really working. So it depends on which semester you want to teach the course. But really it's a year from that, year before that semester is when the course needs to get into the approval process.
I think I got myself confused there answering that, but yeah, I think.
Right on.
All right.
Well, let's turn it over to Jeff. Jeff's going to talk a little bit more about what makes a pathway course.
Hey, everybody. As JP was just talking about, there's, a process that you'll go through to get your class approved, regardless of which option you're choosing, if you have an existing course or you're creating a new one. And as part of that UGEC process, you'll be asked to provide a description of how you're integrating the pathway theme into the course design that you have. And I want to emphasize here that you, of course, have flexibility in how you approach this because, you're the content expert, but you will need to demonstrate a sufficient level of integration of the AI theme as part of this process. And so this is just a practical way to help you think through how can I demonstrate this integration. So in your description, the description that you write to UGEC, you might want to address the following possible ways of integrating the theme of AI into your course. I'll go over each one. As I go over each one, I invite you to write down brainstorming ideas of how you might do that with your course. And then at the end of this, we can have an extended time to brainstorm together, work through questions, thoughts that you might have. So we'll start with content and sources, which is just about how the readings or the cases or the examples, any kinds of materials that you're using, how do they engage the pathway theme? So specifically there, does that not work, Matt? Are you able to click on that? I have a good
Didn't
fix.
work. Sorry, it jumped to the different slide.
Okay, let me fix it real quick. Okay, now try.
Up, up, up. No,
Are you presenting from the shared
I
file?
thought so. I thought so. I can't seem to get to those hidden. If you could unhide
I
those.
unhid them. Yeah, I just
Here we go. Here we go. Is that right?
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, hold on a second here. Am I not sharing?
I lost the shared screen.
Okay, thank you. Do, do, do.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so thinking of content and sources, again, the readings, cases, examples, materials, how are they engaging the pathway theme? Here's some examples from the pathway pioneers who hopefully we'll be able to hear from some of them later. But I just pulled some examples that they've of ways that they've integrated the theme into their courses. So here, in this course, they're reading this particular text. It's a textbook or an entire book called the AI Mirror, which addresses philosophical, moral, and other practical issues related to the positive and negative consequences of the use of AI for humanity. Students will reflect on how AI does or does not fit within their conception of the good life, individually and collectively understood. So in this example, they're using an entire text devoted to AI, but that may not be feasible for your classes, and that's fine. So you can think about specific articles, websites, uh, videos, case studies, or other material that you may be able to use in, it may not be a whole textbook or an entire book that they're reading, but a few of these things throughout the course that you may be able to use to integrate AI and demonstrate integration of AI into the course. So again, as I'm going through these, I encourage you to jot down some ideas you might have, and then afterwards we can workshop it a little if that's helpful to you. We can move to assessments. So thinking through how the assessments that you use, whether the assignments or exams or projects, whatever it is, how do they require students to apply your disciplinary thinking to AI? Because again, we're not just teaching classes on AI here. We're applying your discipline's specific lens to the topic of AI. So here's an example. Soc 131, they have a reflection journal assignment that asks students to critique AI outputs using different sociological theories. So they're very clearly applying their disciplinary lens to the pathway. And students are learning to identify when AI amplifies social inequalities and propose potential policy or ethical solutions. So just one small example of an assignment that is really getting those students to use sociology as a discipline to think through AI using all the different theories that they would have learned in that class otherwise, but now just using it for the specific topic of AI. Class activities would be a third way of demonstrating integration. So thinking through how the discussions, whether again online class or in class kinds of activities, exercises they're doing, if they're doing a lab or other general activities that are conducted in your course, how are they integrating AI? So here's English 102. They are doing a source mapping activity where they're grouping and comparing sources. So they're going to discuss bias, accuracy, inaccuracy, and the relevance in the sources. And this is aligning with the AI literacy goals that they have. And they're doing an AI exercise where they're going to have AI generate a summary of a source, and then the students are going to go in and fact check and compare that with the original and see how accurate it is or isn't. So very applicable to English in terms of an activity and seeing, is AI doing it well or not well? Where are its limitations? So those are class activities. And then finally, just the overall course structure would be a good way of demonstrating AI integration. We're not looking for, this week is AI week. Instead, it's, are we seeing AI kind of, integrated, not in every week, not in every activity necessarily, but is it integrated throughout the overall course structure in a way that shows that you really are engaging in a deep way with AI? So here's just a course schedule that was provided for the sociology class. You can see AI is there quite a bit every week almost. It doesn't necessarily have to be the focus of those weeks, but there will be integration, and that's demonstrated in the course outline. So that's the ways of integrating AI for to help you succeed in the approval process. I think, Matt, if you think it's helpful, we could just give everybody a time to brainstorm some of these ideas, and we can, workshop it together, whatever you think is useful.
I love that idea. Why don't we take I know that some people had to step away for a second. So I guess what I would suggest is that we take 10 minutes to get to a 10-minute break. You can use that time to take a break, or you can work on your thinking about ways to integrate or to establish the integration of AI into your course, different ways we can do it. And when we come back in 10 minutes, we can hear what you came up with. I also want to say I put in the chat the general education course proposal application. So you can see exactly what you're going to need to complete in order to propose the course to the UGEC, to the Gen Ed community. So check that out. And so it is 2:13. And so we'll come back at 2:23 and we'll have a discussion about integration, and then we'll move on from there. Does that sound good? So 10-minute break and we'll come back. Thanks. Well, it is 2:22, almost 10 minutes. Catherine, are you there? Or Alan or Minaj, are you there? Still with us?
Yes.
Oh, good, you're still here. Thank you. Awesome. I know that Alan and Catherine said they had to step away. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to come back. Hopefully they are. Otherwise, they would have quit the presentation. So hopefully they'll come back in a minute. Uh, but really, it's just us. Listen to you. I can't reply. Really, no problem. Thank you, Catherine. Um, so Manoj, did you get a chance to think about how you could incorporate AI into a pathway course, into your course? Well, before we get to that, tell us, do you think you're going to propose a brand new course for general education, or are you going to modify an existing course?
This is from element 4B, social and behavioral science course, and that would be TEC 102, technology and society. As Dr. Joshi already shared this content with you, so I'll be just, yeah, on behalf of him, I'll be just, yeah, listening and then getting the whatever the guidelines you are giving. So with that, the TEC 102, so he's given some of the guidelines to me. Like essential skill number 4, that is interact effectively with the people, and then the essential skill number 10, use the information for decision making. So some skill, and then some case study. Let me go through the like course schedule, the framework for the understanding, like how introduction will be there, history of disruption and all. Then module number 2, the AI revolution pathway focus is there. In that, what is AI, demystifying the algorithms, machine learning and generative AI. Then week 5, the automation and then the future of AI. So algorithm basic, so discrimination in facial recognition, policing, and then the hiring. So these are the few things, and then later on, the technology and then the human interaction. He added that for the truth in the digital age, deep fakes and misinformation. So yeah, and then the week for the attention economy, social media and the behavioral psychology, privacy versus security, that is surveillance, capitalism, and then the social control, and the digital divide, global inequality, and then the access. So these are the few things. And later on, he added something like week 13, AI pathway project, in class ethics board simulation, that is the one, and then the peer review of policy briefs, and then the final AI policy decision brief. So these are the few AI related topic I just wanted to tell you from the proposed course.
That sounds great. Yeah, you're really covering a lot of bases in that class. It's really, yeah, you got an ambitious set of ideas you want to get across, all the way from the basics of AI all the way up to, lots of implications of it. So I think that sounds great. It sounds like a really, in some ways, almost a foundational class about AI for students, which would be great. I think it'd be awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I know that Catherine can't really speak, and Alan might not be back, so I guess we'll move on to the next step of our presentation, the final one before we welcome in some of our pathway pioneers to talk about their courses and how they're thinking about it. So I'm going to share my screen again, because what we've been talking about, what JP was really talking about having competencies as well as skills. I guess what I would say from a pathway perspective is that two essential skills is the minimum required, right? We've assigned particular skills to particular sub elements, and so every course in those sub elements have to address and develop those particular skills, but that's just the minimum. And there's no reason why you couldn't try to have more than just those two skills in your class. And I think actually it's possible to have not just more than two, but maybe many more than two. And I think it'd be a fun exercise to try and think about designing a course that had as many of the skills as you could possibly cram into it. I'm not sure what the maximum number would be, but I think it would be fun to think about. But I think that it's what I hope is that it's going to be relatively easy for most people to add a third skill to their course, and that is civic engagement. Now, one of the cell ones has civic engagement as its assigned skill, second skill, but for the rest of us, civic engagement it would be a third skill. But I think that we can create a structure that will make it not necessarily easy, but at least will facilitate the development of civic engagement in really almost any class. And that is by having what we're calling the Pathway Conference. So the way the conference is going to work is that it's going to happen each April during Scholars Week or Scholars Fortnight. There's every April now. It's growing in scope and time, but as you know, in April we have lots of activities that are really designed to highlight scholarship, and whether it's faculty scholarship or student scholarship on our campus. And we're going to add to that a Pathway Conference. And we're going to open up the Pathway Conference to any student who has taken a Pathway course that academic year. So it could have been in the fall, could have been in the spring. And they can submit something, whatever it is, to the Pathway Conference, or entire classes could choose to submit something to the conference as a class if they wanted to, or groups of students. It's really designed to be very flexible. And what they propose, what they submit to the conference can take almost any form. We're going to make it very flexible. So it could be a presentation, it could be a video or a podcast or an infographic or a white paper or a policy brief, or really any kind of deliverable you can come up with. But the idea behind whatever it is that that people submit to the conference, the idea is, does this have the potential to benefit people who haven't taken the course, right? So one of the criticisms we heard about the pathway model is that a relatively small number of students are going to benefit from the pathway courses because there aren't that many pathway courses, at least initially. And so only a few students are going to get the benefit of taking the pathway courses initially. So what can we do to spread out the benefit that those students are going to obtain in those pathway courses by having them present something based on what they learned, what skills they developed, what expertise they developed in that pathway course? What is it that they could create that would benefit someone who did not take that pathway course? So really, it's asking people to think about a target for this deliverable. So that target could be other students at EKU, it could be faculty, it could be administrators, or in fact, it could be someone off campus, right? Someone out in the community who is dealing with some sort of AI-related problem. And so our students could be thinking about how they could benefit those groups. So what do the students have to do to create something for the conference? Students have to think about what they've learned from their course and then translate it from an audience, or translate it for an audience that doesn't have that same background, right? Hasn't had the benefit of spending an entire semester learning about this thing. They got to figure out what actually matters from that course and what's worth sharing. And they have to kind of revisit, especially if they took the course in the fall, they have to revisit and deepen everything that they learned from the pathway course in order to do it well. And these are not soft skills. These are some of the most challenging intellectual skills and tasks there is. If you think about those three things, right? Thinking about what matters, thinking about audience, and thinking about the content in a deep way, that is really thinking about the content and the skills of a course in a really sophisticated way. So what I thought we could do now again is to, let's see if I can't get back here to my meeting. I have created another handout that asks you to think about what students in your course could create that they could submit to a pathway conference. So this handout is designed to help you, kind of walk you through that process and give you some time to do a little brainstorming about what it is that your class as a whole or individual students or groups of students could create at the end of the course that you are imagining, you are envisioning. What could they create that would benefit someone who didn't take the course that they could present in a conference atmosphere? So what I'd like to do is just give you, let's get 6 minutes to think about it, and we'll come back in 6 minutes, and we'll see if you have ideas. I've got ideas myself about how what I can envision, and all of us can kind of brainstorm something that might be appropriate and beneficial for the conference idea. So it's 2:34, so we'll come back at 2:40, and we'll see what we've come up with. Okay, 240. Who has an idea for what they could have their students do to submit to the conference? Anybody have an idea?
Uh, we propose one or two ideas in that. That is a AI pathway project, and I think you also mentioned something in your step two process there. So the idea will be the AI ethics board simulation kind of thing. The class will be means the group will be presenting that ethics review board for the fictional city. Means if cities is considering deploying controversial AI technology like the smart surveillance cameras with facial recognition in public parks or somewhere. So, will that be good or not? It is going to be the group is going to be discussed with that by taking one side, the positive side, and then one will be the negative side. So then they will dig a little bit deeper on that, and they will come to the conclusion. So based on that, so that will be the activity, and then later on there are the other things he mentioned related to that, but that is a one kind of concept. The another concept he mentioned, that is a AI policy decision brief. If some if they are implementing some like should the Madison County School Board purchase AI monitoring software to detect something unusual activity or the weapon in hallways or in the some areas, restricted areas like schools, universities, or some places are there, the public places. So like that will, so these kind of, so based on that they're going to be get how the system will work, whether it is beneficial, what are the adverse effect of that if we implement that, how the data privacy. So these are the two idea as I am able to see he propose in that.
That sounds great. They sound fantastic. Your students are already working on that. They're already going to be producing something essentially, and so it would be easy to just submit either one of those things to the conference. I think that would be very beneficial for the people who were not in your class. Wonderful. Thanks. Anybody else?
I was going to add in, I think that's a huge benefit of this pathway, I think in general, but for your students, for their careers, for their understanding of the topic, for their development of essential skills, all of the above.
Absolutely. Yeah, I the one I have in mind is, if I teach a psychology related AI pathway course, um, I think my students would want to, I would want my students to think about the different kinds of thinking that AI can do and AI cannot do. And so some things, I mean, and these things change all the time, but some things AI are very good at, some things AI is very bad at. And I think lots of people are concerned about the effects of sort of offloading our kinds of thinking to AI, and that we might actually atrophy to a certain degree. So if we're using AI to make ethical decisions all the time and we just leave it up to AI to do that, then we're not going to that part of our brain that is involved in ethical reasoning might get a little bit weaker, and so that would be something we want to be really think about. So I could envision students coming up with sort of recommendations for the kinds of thinking, creativity versus analysis versus planning. Some things are AI is good at, and you might want to use AI for. Some things AI is not good at, and you wouldn't want to use AI for. Some things we want to retain, even if AI is good at it. We want to retain and keep the human in the loop. And so I can foresee sort of some sort of advice that they could say, look, this is what we learned about human thought and AI, and based on that, here are our recommendations for how people should think about using AI to either replace their own thinking or uh, supplement their thinking or not use at all because we want to retain this for our own efforts. So that's something that I've been thinking about. But there are all kinds of things that we could get students to create that I think would be beneficial for them. Like you're saying, Jeff, it's good for the students, but it's also really um, good for the community potentially. I'm just going to share my screen just briefly again. Let's see if I can't get back to the right place. Well, that's not showing me what I want to see here. Sorry about this. Okay, so one of the things about the Pathway Conference is that it's going to help send a message to our students. And that message is what is in part that what they're learning isn't just for them, right? It's bigger than just them. It can have a broader impact than on just them. And in fact, that their education, the privilege that they are receiving by going to EKU, coming to EKU and getting, this expensive and time consuming and labor consuming education is a benefit to them, but it's also at least an opportunity, if not an obligation, to contribute to the community's capacity to understand and address challenges, right? And so AI is posing all sorts of challenges to the community. And so by coming to EKU and going through these pathway courses, we're showing them that by participating in this conference, that what they're doing can have a meaningful impact on the community around them. And again, getting them to see themselves as contributors to the community, not just sort of passive actors or recipients or passengers in their community, but actually people who have some agency and something to contribute to their community as a result of what they've experienced here at Eastern, especially in our pathway courses. I think that's a really important lesson that we can communicate to them in a really explicit and deliberate way by involving them in this conference that, again, is not just for their benefit. It might even primarily be for their benefit, right? We're here to help those students, our students, but it's also bigger than that. And I think that's a really important lesson. So this is really, in my mind, part of what serving Eastern Kentucky looks like, right? This is part of our mission as an institution, is to serve our region. It's not an abstraction. The conference is going to make it an annual sort of very explicit demonstration of that opportunity, if not obligation, and possibility, where they can have an impact on the community around them. So general education isn't just some sort of abstract, it's good for your life, and we hope it makes you have a meaningful life. It's that as well, but it's also, here is a direct way that what you're doing in class here at EKU can have a connection to the world around you in a very apparent, very direct, and meaningful way, especially by addressing challenges that our students are facing right now as students and will face after they graduate, as well as the community around us, the surrounding community, are also facing this challenge of AI and its many different implications. So our hope is that the Pathway Conference is part of not every pathway course. If you teach a pathway course and you don't want to be part of the conference, it's not a requirement, but it's certainly an opportunity. And we're going to build out this sort of infrastructure where there's going to be a conference and there's going to be submission deadlines and submission guidelines. And so we're going to try and facilitate, make it as easy as possible for students or classes or groups of students to submit to the conference. It also gives students, right, this conference presentation experience, which I think is good for communication. as well as getting along with others, as well as civic engagement. So I think that there are a lot of benefits that can come from participating and engaging in the Pathway Conference, and we're very excited about what that's going to look like going forward. One final request from the EETC to people who are going to teach a Pathway course, and that is to share with your students the philosophy of the Pathway model and where your course fits into it. And really, we can tell you what our philosophy of the Pathway model is. We try to make that clear in the information session. I'll try to reiterate it here in very short form, but more importantly, it's what you think the philosophy of the Pathway model is, and especially in terms of your course. So for the EETC, our idea of the Pathway model is that our world is facing these very difficult challenges, AI just being one of them, and that our students are going to be better equipped to live their lives in a world where there is this problem if they can understand the problem from multiple perspectives, from multiple disciplinary perspectives, and have studied AI both as a topic of study, but also perhaps as a method or a skill that they could, develop, whether it is in how to use AI more effectively or how to avoid using AI more effectively, whatever that is. But the idea is that students taking not just one course about AI from one professor, one disciplinary perspective, but multiple, that's really going to set them up to be able to deal with effectively this world where AI is going to be present. And so when they take a mathematics class and a philosophy class and an English class and a psychology class, all looking at the same problem, they're going to understand it in a way that really probably very few people in the Commonwealth really have that kind of understanding of, in this case, AI, but whatever other themes are developed on our campus. They're going to have a very nuanced, sophisticated, critical thinking backed way of understanding this problem. And that each course, each pathway course is going to provide a different perspective, kind of be a different piece of the puzzle that our students are going to be able to put together and really integrate all of these different perspectives so that they understand this problem in a very nuanced way. So our request is that you don't spend much time on it, but that you spend a little bit of time at some point talking about the philosophy of the pathway model and how your course fits into it. Well, that's all that we have in terms of prepared content. At 3 o'clock, we're going to welcome in some of the pathway pioneers, people who are further along in developing their pathway courses, people who are going to teach the very first pathway courses in fall of 2026. And so unless someone has a question or a comment, I suggest that we have a short break until 3 o'clock, and we'll come back at 3 o'clock and have a time where we can just have questions and answers. Any thoughts before we break until 3? All right. Okay, so we'll come back at 3, and hopefully by then we'll be joined by some of the pathway pioneers. Okay, I'll see you at 3 o'clock. Sorry, my cat wanted to be at the meeting as well. It's 3 o'clock and welcome back. We just had a short break. I'm happy to, here's another pioneer. Fabulous. Welcome, Dr. K and Dr. Austin.
Thank you.
These are two of the pathway pioneers. I'm just going to share my screen just for a second here to introduce two of the four pathway pioneers. Dr. Ashby will be able to join us just a little bit later. He had a commitment, so he's gonna join us a little bit later. But we do have Mike Austin from philosophy and Lisa Kay from mathematics and statistics. And I don't think Sienna is going to be here. Dr. Applegate's not going to be here, but they are developing co-developing a course together in statistics. So Lisa and Mike, we have had 2 hours of content already. So we don't have. Some people have had to step away for a second, so there's that to deal with as well. But I'm going to stop sharing. But what we have, stop sharing. There we go. What we have promised our participants is that we would have a question and answer period with our pathway pioneers. So again, just a quick description of who the pathway pioneers are. We asked a number of select faculty across the campus to develop the very first pathway courses, and those pathway courses are going to be taught in fall 26, just next semester. And so they have been busy working on developing these pathway courses really since, here's Dr. Applegate, wonderful. And so they've been busy developing their courses for the past few months. Really, they started in the fall. And so they are ahead of anybody else in developing their pathway courses. They have syllabi and assessments and course schedules and all the rest. And so they have already solved many of the questions, or answered many of the questions that some of the people in this meeting are thinking about solving themselves. So I guess what I'd like to do is start off by having each one of the pioneers talk to us a little bit about your course, what your approach is, and what your course is going to be about. Who wants to start?
I'll go alphabetically. How about that, Lisa?
There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, it's technology and values. And so this is a course that's been on the books and I used to teach. Probably last time was like 2013, but it seemed like a prime candidate for this, obviously, to change it and revise it with an AI emphasis. So basically, I'm actually teaching the course right now, pretty much the version I'll teach next year, because we're doing AI stuff in our department, different events this year. Anyway, so yeah, so the first part of the course, first half or so, is more general stuff about philosophical approaches to technology and ethical issues related to it. And then the second half, like we'd look at a few issues like AI and mental health, AI, like are there values embedded in AI or not? And then we're reading a book called The AI Mirror, which is an extended kind of philosophical book written for non-academics to a degree, that I think is really good because it's like an overall picture. So then I'm trying to get students to think about it both as at the social level, like AI in society, but also in their own individual lives, and not just work, but personal and professional lives, what role it can play, what are the positive uses, negative uses, what are the open questions. So that's the gist of it.
So the course that Sienna and I are developing is not just new to the pathway, but it's a new course in general. EKU has several flavors of statistics, I guess both in our department and outside it. But this will be a statistical literacy course. So the focus is really on teaching students how to consume information related to data
whether it's in the news or on social media, what have you. And sure, there will be some calculations, but that will be emphasized less than what it would be in some of these other statistics courses. With regard to AI, I think one way we will incorporate it is simply just through context, because and some of you may have heard this quote before, but a famous statistician, Tukey, once said something like, one of the great things about statistics is that you get to play in everybody else's backyard. So, you could give me a topic, just about any topic, and I think I could build a statistics course around it. And so one of the ways we're going to incorporate AI is simply to find examples of data related to AI out there and bring that into the examples we present in class. We've already located some articles related to AI that we have on our syllabus. We're still thinking about use of AI, how much we want to do with that, because one of the, I think, more practical uses of AI in statistics is helping with coding. Well, we don't really want to focus on coding in a statistical literacy course. So we're still discussing that, but Sienna and I actually applied to get a course development grant for developing this course. So we are currently working with an instructional designer and should have the course ready to go, I think, by June. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Sienna, you have anything to add?
Not really. I think it pretty much covered it.
Well, before we open it up to questions, let me ask you both a question that I think is a really important one, and that is, are you going to ask students to use AI as part of the course? And before you answer, I'll just say I think from the EETC perspective of our thinking about the pathway courses about choosing AI as the theme, we are relatively neutral about the use of AI. In terms of the courses, you could choose to have your students use it. You could choose to have your students not use it. It really depends on your disciplinary perspective on AI and what you think you want your students to take from it. But given that flexibility, I'm just curious about what your thoughts are about asking students to use AI as part of the course.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. And because I'm sort of being contrarian about I kind of go through phases. So I'm in a contrarian phase. But anyway, generally they don't have to, but so I have a couple just kind of traditional, more reflective exams. But for a project, they can either like stake out a philosophical position about AI and defend it. But another option is to have force some version or some brand of AI into a debate. So it could be an issue in ethics, could be about AI or technology. It could be a more general philosophical question. Does God exist? Anything they want. So really open-ended. So then they have that, but then what they do is write a reflection paper on it, including transcripts from it. So like evaluating the arguments that the AI gave or did it feel like you were interacting with a person? How so, how not? What was your overall, like kind of the positives and negatives of the experience? So in that way, so they've got options to do that. And that can be in anything, personal, professional, social, ethical issue. Should you use AI as an ethical interlocutor is a possible thing to debate it about. So in that way, yeah.
I guess I already alluded to the fact that I'm somewhat torn. So I'm still thinking about how to use it. And then I'm glad you asked that, because I noticed that I think when we mentioned this AI theme, our instructional designer assumed that we would be, incorporating the use of AI. And I said, well, that's not necessarily the focus of the theme, really. But I do have one thing in mind. Sienna and I have discussed. This is part of an assignment that I have tried with a couple of other classes, and it has worked fairly well. we're going to have students create infographics. And assuming that this tool, PictoChart, is still free in the fall, we'll have them use it, and it now has an AI option. And so what I have started doing is having students create both an AI version and their own version without using AI, and then comparing them. And so far, what I've seen is that the student generated versions are better than the AI versions. Now, maybe if you knew exactly what to tell the AI part of PictoChart, maybe it could do as well. But at least so far, what I've seen is that the ones where the students have more creative freedom and they just decide where they're going to put things on this infographic, they're better. And then we're also going to have them present that. They're going to present their infographics at the end of the course. And they can do it, we'll give them some agency there and let them, choose their topics. So I think it'll be fun. So that's one way we're going to. I think we're going to have to brainstorm a little bit more to see if we want to have them use AI tools in any other ways.
Though they both sound like totally reasonable approaches. I will say I'm teaching an AI honors class right now, um, and I'm teaching it with Lisa Blue, who's kind of our AI expert on campus. And what she talks about and what we found in our class is that there are students who are opposed to using AI for a variety of reasons. And so it's been important to us to honor those positions. So we've tried to make it so that everything that we asked them to do could be done without AI, like you were talking about, Lisa. You could do it without AI if you want. I mean, you can totally not use AI and do it the traditional way. But we also are allowing them to use AI, especially if they are transparent about it, and disclose their use and how they use it, and hopefully reflect on how they used it and what they thought of it. So I think those are really, really smart approaches. So I want to open it up to other people in the meeting to ask questions of our AI pathway pioneers. What questions do you have for them about their process or the decisions they're making, or what they're excited about, what they're dreading, what they're fearful of? I don't know, whatever it is. If you wish, you can put it in the chat if that is more comfortable.
I have a question.
Right on.
This could be for anyone. What advice would you give for completing the curriculum proposal form and the gen ed application? And did you run into any roadblocks along the way of that process?
I actually missed the first part of that. I was trying to get the chat open. Can you tell me the first part of the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just asking what advice you would have for completing the curriculum proposal form as well as the gen ed proposal form, and then what roadblocks you experienced, if any.
Yeah, we had help with that, I think. Matt, am I remembering right? Because we were kind of in a time crunch, so our process is probably a little bit different than
Yeah,
yours was.
they were expedited, we'll say, and facilitated. So, but I think as someone who's filled out some course proposal or curricular forms, that is mostly an exercise in detail focus, making sure everything is in the right place. And the UGEC proposal, the Gen Ed proposal, is a bit more philosophical and pedagogical.
I can speak to
Yeah, please, JP, you
a
can
little
talk about
bit.
that.
Yeah, I think sometimes our committee gets can have a bit of a reputation of being tough sometimes, but actually in all the years I've been on it, for the most part, it's been quite collegial. I think the big thing is thinking through, when you select what element you want you're applying for, think through how does that course fit in that element. I think for the most part, when we've had, some pushback on approving class, it's largely been, does this course naturally make sense in, that element? You know, and kind of remembering that, it's part of the pathway, but it is also part of gen ed. So when you're developing, assessment instruments for the competencies, have those prepared. And certainly, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to myself, Aaron. I will be upfront. Erin is much better at the assessment part than I am. She's an expert and that has done that a long time. So, um, but those are big things. Why this course, in this element, and how does it meet, advance those goals and competencies. And I think the remembering if you're going to be part of the pathway, what I think was Jeff mentioned, can't just be a tag on chapter in the it's got to be a substantive part of the course and be able to articulate that narrative. So, does that answer kind of give some sense of the question? But
Yes, thank you.
I'll just add that I would say, just make sure you look carefully at the general education goals and, of course, these new competencies, the graduate profile, that we're incorporating, and try to make sure that you're aligning your answers with those things, and of course, focusing on the benefits to students.
I see Wendy asked in the chat. Oh, Mike, you want to say something? Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to actually, address that question in the chat. Like, one, I
Please.
think, is what you said, like, for me, making it optional. But two, I mean, I guess it depends on your discipline, but it's easy in my course to deal with students who are anti-AI because then they have a chance, like, if they want to write a paper or make an argument on an essay exam or just in class, then they, bring it. So giving them a chance to voice those, give their reasons, have them think through it, and be able to articulate, interact with others. So I think it's actually good. I want, students disagreeing in my class. And this is an upper division class, so it's a little bit smaller than, a gen ed class of 30 or 35. So I guess it's 20 to 25 is usually what it'll be. So I think in that way, it's really good. I want them in there. And I think probably most of us, as long as we're giving them as long as they're doing it well, right, and not just spouting off stuff, then it can make it better, the experience for the students.
I think for the most part, I think it won't be an issue in the statistics course, because if we're just talking about the statistics in an article related to AI, I don't think that will bother those students. And so far, when I've had students create the infographic with and without AI, no one has complained. Perhaps because it's not like they're going into Chat GPT or something like that. It's literally built into this tool. So it hasn't been an issue yet. Now, if we were to look at other uses of AI, it gets more complicated. But what I will say is this, as a statistician, I have been at some conferences recently and have spoken to members of our advisory council. And what I'm hearing is that our graduates are going to be expected to use AI. They will have to use it, or at least statistics majors will, because they're going to have to use it in order to say code faster. They have to have a strong foundation. They do have to know how to code, but they will have to be able to produce things more quickly by using AI. And so while, I understand some students may have opposition to using AI, I'm not sure how we're going to escape it, or at least much longer, because employers simply won't hire our students in my field if they don't use it at least some of the time.
Can I say something real quick?
Please.
I'm thinking about my own course, AI and criminal justice, and I'm thinking it might be helpful and beneficial to kind of build the anti-AI argument into some of the assignments. So, like giving them situations like, let's say you're going to be a police officer and you've been instructed to use this new technology that you are not necessarily comfortable with ethically. And if one of the elements is to, interact effectively with people, maybe you ask students to articulate an argument to their superior why they do not agree ethically with having to use this particular piece of technology in this particular way.
That's powerful. I love that idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so excited to have a, criminal justice class, in the pathway would be, fantastic. And there's so much, so much there to explore. And again, there's so many ways that AI is interacting with criminal justice that I only know a little bit of, but just that amount is terrifying at times. And I think, people who are not police officers are going to have to figure out how to interact with that, how to deal with that. Much less people who work in law enforcement. That's going to be a real challenge. Thanks.
More generally, I'll just add, I think, the exact application will depend on the class, but as you've said, Matt, we want, as part of general ed and any pathway, the full spectrum of perspectives. There are a lot of good arguments and perspectives that AI is wonderful and advancing, making us more productive. And there's arguments, ethical concerns, and employment concerns, and students that are going to be truly robustly understand the challenge and the opportunity need all those perspectives. And so classes that talk about the downsides, classes that talk about the advances, and just deliberate the issue are what we want in the pathways. And to Alan's class, I will show my Hollywood, my sci-fi bias, but I love the idea of like a assignment looking at like something like facial recognition in public spaces using public access cameras, what AI can do to scour, data that would take days or weeks for a human being to find some kind of suspect or something.
I actually have a great example related to that. Because it's based on, facial recognition is based on, algorithms that are based on, data. Well, there was a TED Talk by this woman who, I think when she was a graduate student, was looking at this, facial recognition tool, and she had very dark skin, and it would only recognize her when she put a white mask over her face. But the data in the background is, was not based on people with her skin color. And so, that matters. And I can't remember if we've already found a place to work that into the course or not, but I want to.
Absolutely.
And of course, right now, the Department of Defense, War, whatever it is, I mean, they're in a big conflict with AI companies because, an AI company didn't want to have their product used to do mass surveillance. or drone weapons, automated weapons. And so, you know, I don't know, it's very complicated, and like it gets into so many different areas where it's politics or legal issues or technology issues, ethical issues. I mean, it's such a complicated topic that I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, and it's ongoing. I mean, the people are still trying to figure it out right now.
Yeah, I think one mistake, even when like at the department level or others, is people think that the pathway is like teaching students how to use AI. Like it's just all pro AI, how to use it in your field. And yeah, there may be, of course, there's room for that, but it's not. Yeah, it's not just that. So it's this. I guess I'm rehashing, but yeah, the critical perspective, and that for me, that like somebody from we just talked about some of those about recidivism rates and AI predicting who's going to like commit a crime and how the problems of that. So yeah, so there's lots of really difficult questions, but important ones that yeah, get that students don't even think about because they just think of it as like a magic genie to help them write papers or whatever it is. So anyway, yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of the pathways. They could probably have a professor who's much more pro in their field versus someone who's more con versus undecided, so they get a broader spectrum of views and prepares them hopefully for the ethical and just the technical questions as well.
If I may say something, I was driving earlier, so I couldn't say anything. But one of the things that the reason why I asked about how do we handle students in the best way in regards to the ones that are anti-AI, I teach a mass media and society class. It's general education, and we have in one of the chapters, it discusses artificial intelligence. We were just having a conversation about it last semester, and two of my students, and there were quite a few of them in there that were anti-AI, but two of them got so heated in the discussion. And I was telling them, this is something that you all should be familiar with. It's going to be a part of your all's careers, most careers of whatever you go into. Two students got so mad they got up and walked out of class. And I gave them space to talk and said, I respect it. Yeah, you are not wrong for feeling the way you feel about it, and gave them the space to talk and share their feelings, but then got so mad that they left. And I think that this is a situation, especially with some of the younger students, we're not expecting, because us as older people who've been around technology, we think, we're not, I don't know. We think that these younger kids, or for me, I think that the younger kids who've been around technology all their lives should not be afraid of it or weirded out by it. But I had a friend who's an art teacher in Lexington who had me come and speak to his art students. I was the first person in Kentucky to have an all AI art exhibit a few years ago. So I came and talked to them because he was getting so much backlash for incorporating AI tools in his classroom from the students who were just like 18, 19 years old, right? And so they didn't really bend much with me talking to them either, but I'm just saying this is something to expect that we should also prepare for. And that was one reason why I was just asking, what are you all planning to do? Because it's a thing that's we've got to incorporate it into the class somehow. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really good question. I think it's going to depend somewhat on field and level. Um, you know, my oldest daughter has degrees in sociology and English, and she does digital art. She is very strongly opposed to AI use in art. And she was also just this week, and she's still in her 20s for a little bit longer, and she was explaining to my youngest daughter's nurse how bad AI is for the environment. And so, yes, you're right. These younger people have grown up with technology more than we did, but they have feelings for reasons. My like I said, my daughter feels like, I guess with art, she feels like people who are using AI are stealing other people's work, and at least to some extent. Uh, and 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 again, she's concerned about the environment. It's very valid concern. So I understand why people feel strongly about it. I think with regard to statistics at the 100 level, that's not where I would expect them to use it as much, because as I said, when you talk to employers, you talk to, some of our alumni, what I'm hearing is that the students have got to have strong foundational skills. Really, they need that first. And so to me, I would feel like, at least within our major, we need to be incorporating AI probably at some of our upper division courses where students already know, they know how to code. They understand the basics of statistics first. So in this 100 level, that's one of the reasons I'm just really torn about AI use is, I don't really want to try to teach the students to code in this 100 level course. And I'm just trying to think about what would they use AI for reasonably in there. So I'm really glad you asked the question. It's a really good one. And the answer is complicated.
Well, even if I taught it in my class, it would be about, looking at, being media literate and then how to determine what is a news story that is written by AI or video or images or whatever that is generated. So it would be less, what's your opinion about this, other than, rather than that, it would be more, how do we determine what is real human made and what's not? But there's just going to be those heated discussions. And, I'm just not sure. I want to make sure that I'm ethical in allowing the students to have their freedom of expression. And, I don't want them walking out of class on me. Of course, I didn't say anything to make them mad. They were just mad, or maybe they were looking for an excuse to leave. I don't know. So,
Were there
thank you
concerns
so much.
mostly like social justice issue type things, or?
Well, I had at one point had said to them, when you get out into the working world, you will not have time to be creative and spend all the time in the world thinking of whatever you need to do and having a creative process that you may have now. You may need to just get an idea quick, get the job done. And sometimes if you come up against that creative wall, sometimes AI tools can help you out with that, with giving you that little boost forward on getting the job complete. And the the one student was like, people should be able to use their own minds. And I'm like, I don't disagree with that. So because I'm on the fence. I'm pro AI and anti AI, all the same reasons other people are. There are, environment issues and stealing issues and stuff, but I also think these tools can be very helpful if used correctly. So, but it was more along those lines. And I think this was coming from, for these two students, it was coming from a place of feelings and not a place of logic, because there was no logical arguments there. So I think that's something to look at too, on how to handle people that are coming from a place of emotions.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to see responses. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
Could could there be like a, I don't know, a pathway Teams group or a Canvas site or something where we could like maybe share some projects or ideas? I'm just thinking I would really love to see what other people come
Do
up
we
with.
do we still have I haven't heard about them, but we used to have, I mean, like what they call PLCs or professional learning communities, which I think we mentioned that would be, I think, great for each pathway that ultimately gets developed, to have one of those, again, a forum like you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that you could just discuss and brainstorm. And but I do think this is an interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, but I suppose you could see some societal pushback that, is something truly real if it's much AI.
I think that's a great idea, Lisa. I'm happy to facilitate that. I will say that EKU does have an OASIS website, OAISIS, that Lisa Liu is really in charge of, and it has a Teams component to it. And in that Teams, um, there are different channels. It's not particularly for pathway courses, but there are great resources already on there. So if you were looking for more resources about AI in general, it's a rich resource source at this point. But I think I would love to have, whether it's a Canvas course or a Microsoft team that is for pathway instructors to share ideas and ask questions. I think that's a great idea. I'm gonna write that down and I'm gonna make that happen. Other questions or thoughts or reactions or concerns? Well, I am not one to stay until the final bell if we don't need to. We are all busy, and I'm just really grateful that, first of all, to JP and Jeff and Mike and the other Mike Lane and the other people, members of the ETC who worked on this presentation and this workshop. Thank you for their work. But I'm also and I want to thank the Pathway Pioneers, Mike Austin and Lisa Kay, and Sienna Applegate. Tom Ashby, I know he had advising, so that probably went over time. So thanks to him for at least considering being here. But mostly thank you to those of you who came to be part of this, Wendy and Alan and Manoj and Catherine and people who already have left. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest. If you have questions about this process, if questions about what you need to get through this process or ideas that you want to run by us, I know that I am absolutely dying to talk to you about things, and I'm sure the other members of the EETC feel the same way. So please reach out to us if you can, and we're here to help. And we would love to have your pathway course taught on this campus, as soon potentially as spring 2027. That would be delightful. And my guess is that we will run something like this maybe for a few more semesters until we get sort of a critical mass of pathway courses that are on the books. We also hope that there will be new pathway themes developed and thus new opportunities for pathway courses about different themes. So keep your eyes open for that. And I hope you're safe today. I hope that the weather improves, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.